Hi, Mom. I'm here with my album. I hope you enjoy me speaking about my favorite album. Love you, Mom.
Hell yeah. Mom shout outs,
Yeah.
Mr. Famous.
Mom shout-outs.
Okay, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit less intellectual, a little bit more artistic. But still some interpretive practices going on.
Yeah. Philosophy's always going on.
Yeah. Okay, so the general topic of today is two perfect albums. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
I don't know what the title is.
You better have heard of these albums,
Yeah, here's mine.
right? So we have The Doors. This is The Doors' first album. And that, of course, is Bob Dylan's
Sixth album.
sixth album?
Yeah.
Oh, it came out in 1965, I think, right?
Who's to say, Kevin?
We're gonna say it's 1965.
We'll correct ourselves on the screen if we're wrong.
Okay. But
But as of now, it seems like we may be right.
we have 3 questions that we're going to center this video on.
Okay.
The first question, why is this a perfect album? The second question being, what do you associate this album with? And the third question is, which song do you think captures the feeling of this album, captures the vibe?
Which is tough, obviously, but we'll try our best.
Yeah, we're gonna try our best. I don't even know what song I'm gonna pick.
Yeah, me neither. First question, why is this a perfect album?
It's tough to explain why something's perfect in imperfect terms, but I'll do my best.
So first off, this album is just so easy to listen to from start to finish. I've done it at least once a year for the past 6 or 7 years of my life. It's just amazing. The lyrics are poetic, they're deep. In many ways, it's a coming of age album, at least from my perspective, because he goes from acoustic, folk to rock, and he kicks through the doorway, and he's like, look at me now, world. I can do a hell of a lot more than you thought I could. And it's just awesome to listen to and to hear.
But even though this is a perfect album, and
Yeah.
everyone agrees that that's a perfect album, is it your favorite Dylan album?
It is my favorite Dylan album, yeah.
Wow. Mine,
Is this the most famous one, do you think?
I think it's one of the
Or
most famous.
Blonde on Blonde, maybe?
I was gonna say Blonde on Blonde's my favorite.
Yeah.
I love Blonde on Blonde.
I think this one potentially has 2 of his most famous songs on it, so
Yeah.
maybe a lot of people gravitate toward this one.
Yeah, I really like Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues.
Hell yeah. Why is it perfect? Besides its listenability, besides how deep AF the lyrics are, and besides Dylan clearly not really giving a what about how he seems or presents himself.
Yeah.
I would say the only other reason it's perfect is because he's breaking the mold, I think, of what a rock and roll song is, particularly like a Rolling Stone. He gives license for future musicians to kind of just be negative and surly and complain, and rock music isn't necessarily about love or sex anymore. It's just about feeling pissed off and a little bit bitchy and explaining to people why you do.
Yeah. Dylan's a poet, and by this point he was a mature poet.
The Like a Rolling Stone is similar to your Steppenwolf poem in the sense that it was 20 pages. I think Joan Baez explained she was with him when he wrote it, or she had some sort of interaction with him when he was writing this, and it was like he was in a trance writing the poem.
Yeah,
and then
he
he
just
just
had
cut
an
down
excess.
the pieces that he thought were particularly great and turned it into the song.
Dude,
He's obviously a legend.
Dylan's a boss. I saw him live a few years ago. I won't lie, it sucked. Voice is so raspy that
Yeah.
you can't even really understand it. But I mean, the reason why you go is because Dylan.
Yeah,
And you want to be in his presence, in his holy presence.
Yeah, he's a prophet.
He is a prophet in many ways. A lot of modern prophets have been musicians,
Yeah,
maybe literary figures.
and he's both.
Yeah.
All right,
All right.
Kevin's turn. Why is his album a perfect album?
In the last few years, I feel like I've become a bit more self-conscious about my love for the Doors. One, I heard Lou Reed throw some shade on the Doors. He was like, really bad stuff came out of the 60s, like the Doors.
Oh, that's like parents fighting when Lou Reed goes against the Doors.
Yeah, but Lou Reed also said that the Beatles were garbage.
So maybe Lou Reed's kind of just a jerk.
He's an iconoclast.
Yeah.
Right. He's just like, everything sucks besides these few things that I like.
Yeah, besides my very limited music skill or instrument skills, not music skills.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Lou Reed, genius. I love the Transformer album. I love, obviously, all the Velvet Underground albums besides Squeeze, which came out after he left the band and all the other original members. Yeah, but The Doors, I believe this is a perfect album because if you just look song for song, every song is a solid song on this album. Like, they're all great, and there's so many hits. There's Break On Through to the Other Side, Light My Fire, Backdoor Man, The End. Like, there's so many good ones on here. I'm like...
I'm not even the biggest Doors fan, and I know all those songs.
It's just such a good... It's such a good album.
And that's why the devil is parasitic on the good.
I might say it's perfect for me, but that almost negates the value that I would like to attribute to this album. Because when there is something perfect, you don't want to change anything about it. And I don't want to change anything about this album. Right down to the cover. I mean, these letters have become pretty iconic.
Relatively iconic.
And I believe The Doors captured something essential about the 60s. I love the whole story of The Doors. The Doors have had a huge impact on my life. So,
Yeah, this is a good choice
it's
for
a
you.
perfect album. And if you say differently, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah, you can get out,
Yeah, you can get out.
but don't exit this window. Keep watching the video.
Yeah, still give it a thumbs up. Come on.
Yeah. Okay, question 2. What was question 2 again?
All right. With what do we associate this album with?
Okay.
All right. Do you want to go first?
No, snake draft style. So you're going.
Oh.
Again. Yeah.
Wait. So that ties into it because I believe in order to determine the value of an album, and the highest value is going to be perfection, you can't separate it from what it's associated with, either in your own life or societally.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Right? When I was growing up, the Doors were a huge band for me. I still remember in the 7th grade, me and my friend Killian, we bought the 40th anniversary of the Doors. It was like a greatest hits 40th anniversary. It had a ton of songs on it. Mine came with a DVD. His actually didn't come with a DVD. And then we realized the CDs were slightly different. He had a couple songs I didn't have, and I had a couple songs he didn't have.
Oh, maybe they did it on purpose.
Yeah, I think they did, right? So you could like buy both. But
Oh yeah.
me and that friend particularly really enjoyed the Doors in those years. We got a lot. We watched all the documentaries, and we both learned instruments. I played the keyboards, he played the guitar, and we learned Light My Fire. We had so many good jam sessions. We would just go on for 20, 30 minutes. Light My Fire.
Yeah, pop quiz. Did you guys know Light My Fire was sexual in nature when you were learning it? Or did you just think it was a cool phrase?
I have to say, growing up, I never really deliberated over lyrics that much. It was more of the sound of the voice, also the sound of the words on the music, and it was the whole texture
That's
that
cool.
I was really interested in. So I have to say, I was never that kind of kid who picked up the
Memorized the
lyrics.
lyrics, yeah.
And yeah, there are very few songs that I've memorized the lyrics to.
Huh.
But yeah, I namely associate it with my friend Killian, who's the man, still the man, killing it out there in Los Angeles.
He's Killian in it. He's Killian in it.
Yeah, he's Killian in it. Anyway,
All right.
now you.
My association with Highway 61 Revisited. I think, yeah, there's some reiteration here. I associate it with, like, the general coming out of your shell vibe that I think this album is all about. I associate it with a little bit of angst, which I think a lot of music has tied to it. But I also do associate it with one particular friend named Mike, who we listened to it in college a bunch together. It was a bonding experience. I was going to ask Kevin before we started shooting here, to what extent can you be friends with someone if you have a different taste in music? And I think this was a great example of friendship forming because of a similar taste in music, so the opposite end of the spectrum there. You can have a different taste in food and still be friends, but if you
Yeah.
have a fundamentally different taste in music, I would argue it's difficult to be very close friends with someone.
I think I have some close friends that listen to totally different music than I am, but just the dynamic of the friendship isn't centered on music.
Yeah, that's fair.
Most of the time when we were hanging out, it was all of us either in the woods or at somebody's house, building forts, like as kids. And then in college, that did cause some friction, at least my first year. I mean, I'm a pretty big stickler when it comes to music. It's hard for me to hear things that just aren't good, and I don't understand why people listen to bad music.
Well, especially if you're the type of friend group that likes to play music in the background a decent amount.
Yeah.
I think having friends who like want to DJ in very different directions makes it difficult. Like my
Yeah.
4 best friends in college, we all liked pretty much the same music. And
Yeah.
I think maybe that's a reason why we bonded. Okay, but one more thing I associate this album with is, again, just the lyrics. Whereas Kevin said he wasn't much of a lyric guy, I think that's what drew me into music when I was younger more than anything, like memorizing the lyrics, saying them to myself. I don't know, it was really weird, but I at the same time just was really drawn into like the poetry of Dylan because he's very deep, as we
Yeah.
have said. And even if he's not deep, he's the type of guy who has a reputation that precedes him to the point where you just make it deeper than it is.
Yeah.
He's got that going for him too, a feedback loop of deepness.
Yeah. No, Dylan is deep. I mean, I also think Jim Morrison is deep.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people criticize his poetry, or basically that Doors movie that came out in the 90s by
Like
Oliver
Val
Stone.
Kilmer.
Yeah, with
Or
Val Kilmer. I mean, I think Val Kilmer like could have played a really good Jim Morrison, but that movie sucked, and it was basically pornography. It was,
Yeah.
it was, and it was so cheesy, and I think it kind of tarnished the Doors in a certain sense.
Yeah, I bet a certain chunk of a generation that was maybe their first or second impression with the Doors.
Yeah,
So they're like, this band's kind of shitty.
but the truth of the matter, I mean, Jim Morrison read the complete works of Nietzsche by the time he graduated high school. He was reading poetry such as Rimbaud, and he was interested in a lot of like black magic, occult stuff. I mean, he named the Doors after the Doors of Perception from William Blake.
Did he go to Hampshire?
No, I don't think he went to Hampshire.
Or like Occidental?
Oh no, he went to they went to UCLA.
Oh, okay.
They both
Totally different.
him and Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist, both graduated from UCLA from the film school.
Oh, right.
But basically, what I'm saying was he was a smart guy. He was also a man who suffered from addiction. He lived hard, and that's why he died at 27. But
One other thing that's interesting about the Doors is I feel like they're one of those bands who embodies a region and a time period in a way that Dylan isn't, obviously. Like he embody the Midwest or the New York City folk scene. Like Dylan is more amorphous than I think the Doors are.
Yeah.
Like contrasted maybe with the Beach Boys. They're like a harder version of the California music scene at that time, and I think that's an interesting element of them too.
I mean, the Doors really were only on center stage for about 4 years, and then Jim Morrison died in 1971. So they had this 4-year period. Dylan, right? He spans the 60s, and he was big throughout. He had a motorcycle accident at some point, and his music slightly changed for a little bit. But
Yeah.
but he was only out for a couple of years, and he still like released blood on the tracks after that and stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So our last question, and this is a difficult question, is if you could pick one song from that album, which song do you think best captures the feeling of the album?
I'm gonna go with like a canned answer, but I think the self-titled song, Highway 61 Revisited.
Okay.
I think it's a perfect balance of like rock music that he's changing from his previous music, and also the lyrics are deep.
Yeah.
God said, Abraham, kill me a son.
Yeah.
Abe said, God, you must be putting me on. And Dylan's dad is Abraham. And so Dylan's the guy that God wants to kill. It's just like, there's so much
Whoa.
meaning. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's just a great song. There are like the siren whistle in the background. What the song sort of develops into at the end, where some guy wants to start World War III. There's so much angst, there's so much deepness in the lyrics. The music itself is pretty dang catchy too. So I think Highway 61 Revisited is a good pick for what captures the feeling.
Wow. All right, so I guess it's up to me. It's tough for me. It's really tough for me. But I think you have to go with Light My Fire. Light My Fire is their biggest hit. It has the large solo section, which I think is really great, and they were happy at the time to get that on the radio because it was a pretty long song.
Oh, yeah.
It's 6 minutes and 50 seconds. So back then they had to think about these types of things, like we need the single out there, it needs to be 3 minutes, blah blah blah, and they were at the behest of the record company. But they got Light My Fire out there after supposedly Break On Through didn't do as well as they hoped. Even though Break On Through is a great song, I almost picked that. But Light My Fire is just so great. There's also that great event or occasion that in the history of the Doors where they went on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Sullivan asked the band if they could not say the word higher when they sang Light My Fire on stage. Even though higher is not...
It could be just altitude.
Well, they're talking about Baby We Couldn't Get Much Higher, which basically means our love couldn't grow much bigger.
Yeah, it
or
couldn't feel much better.
it's just an all-consuming love.
Yeah.
He found the love of his life in Pamela Corson. They capitulated and said, like, okay, we won't say higher, we'll just say something like better. But then when they went on stage, they said higher, and the Ed Sullivan Show said, you're never coming back again.
Yeah, what did they expect?
Yeah.
It's not rock and roll unless you're going against something or someone.
Yeah.
Ed was that someone.
Yeah, and I still find it amazing, basically, like, rock and roll was still pretty new.
Yeah.
Late 60s and stuff, like it came about in the 50s. What rock and roll was still kind of beginning stages, and a lot of these artists looked back to those people like Elvis and Eddie Cochran and
Muddy
Jerry Lee
Waters.
Lewis.
Yeah.
And Little Richard, who just
Yeah.
passed away, unfortunately.
I know.
Anyway, that's
Yeah.
it.
Anyway, that's
Yeah.
it.
Let us know if you watch this, you want us to talk about anything in particular. We have plans to talk about music more. We have plans to maybe show each other some different music that we
Yeah.
haven't listened to in the past. But let us know if anything we say sparks your interest, because we want to make videos that are cool with you. Take care.
Thanks for watching. I'm talking. Dogs I've been walking. A better tomorrow coming.